Hello, students. Today we are going to do the fourth stanza of the poem The Garden by Andrew Marvell. I have already done the three stanzas in the previous video, so you can go and watch, and I've given an introduction to Andrew Marvell too. Now, in the fourth stanza, the poet actually talks about the mythological figures, God Apollo, who is the sun god. The poet says that a real aim at all times, even in the heat of passion, is always to get peace and quiet, coolness and repose, rest that is found only in the garden. He says, when we have run our passion's heat, love hither makes his best retreat. So when we have run means when our passion, when our heated love has come to an end. Love hither here means in the garden comes back. So our true love starts from the garden and we retreat to the garden again. Trees alone in the garden can give us this peace and quietness. And that is why he refers to two gods. He says, the gods that mortal beauty chase, still in a tree did end their race. Now the gods here are God Apollo, that is the sun god and the god of poetry. And then he talks about the pan god, that is the god of nature. He says they chased, they ran after, they wanted mortal beauties. But their heated passion, their excitement, their enthusiasm to obtain the love of a mortal ended in a garden. So here he says that many gods who fell in love with the earthly beauties, they changed their dear ones into trees, and this shows that God themselves considered the garden and all the plants and trees growing in the garden as suitable abode for their permanent residence. Now, Marvell refers, as I told you, to two Greek mythological stories. Apollo hunted Daphne so only that she might laurel grow. Apollo, who is the sun god, he fell in love with Daphne, who was the daughter of the river god. Daphne did not reciprocate the love of Apollo. She prayed to God to protect her from Apollo's ill intentions. So the Lord Zeus, who is the god of gods, he helped her and she was turned into a laurel tree. Now since then, the laurel has been the favorite emblem of Apollo. Apollo is also the sun god and the god of poetry. And laurel is a herb, and the leaves of the laurel are actually, a crown is made of the leaf of the laurel tree, and it is given to the poet laureate who is the best poet. Then the second example is of Pan god. And Pan did after sirring speed, not as a nymph but for a reed. So now the poet actually talks about Pan god, who was half man and half brute because he was the god of nature. He was half animal and half man. He picked up a love for Syrinx, who was a nymph. She did not love Pan. Pan prayed for help. Then she was turned into a reed, a bamboo. And in the, in order to express his token love for Syrinx, Pan used this bamboo as a pipe for his music. It became a flute. Since then, Pan has been associated with a flute made of reed or a bamboo. Apollo puts on his brow the crown of laurel. Pan plays on the flute, which is made of bamboo. So this is the best form where these two gods could express their love towards the mortal beauties. So this is actually to express or show that the existence of a garden is even superior to the love of gods. Now we go to the next stanza, where you can say that it foreshadows, it tells us actually the sensuousness. And Keats, who is the poet of sensuousness, he must have taken, his influence or his inspiration from this particular stanza. Now, what do you mean by sensuousness? Sensuousness means anything which appeals to your five senses. The sense of taste, the sense of sight, a sense of smell, the sense of touch, and the sense of hearing. So now the poet says, what wondrous life is this I lead, ripe apples drop about my head. Now the poet actually talks about it, talks about his love for nature. He describes a fruit garden in its all beauty. And he says that he feels very happy as he smells and tastes the glories of the garden. The poet has drawn a very sensuous pictures of the pleasures of the fruit garden. He says, ripe apples is dropping about my head. Like apples are so spread everywhere. They're so easily available. They're dropping on my head. The luscious clusters of the wine upon my head mouth do crush their wine. Then the poet talks about the clusters of the juicy grapes. They are so much in abundance. They are so growing so much that they seem eager to be eaten. You can just open your mouth and you can stand under the grapes, and the grapes are actually, they are oozing out their juice directly into your mouth. Wine is the juice of the grapes. The nectarine and the curious speech into my hands themselves to reach. The nectarine. So the nectarine means that the peaches which are full of ripe juice, that is the nectar, and the peaches which are so difficult to find, which they are actually, curious means very difficult to find, not easily available, they are reaching into my hands themselves. I just spread my hands and I can pick up a peach or two and eat it. Stumbling on melons as I pass, ensnared with flowers, I fall on the grass. Now the poet says that he is, like stumbling on the melons which are grown on the ground. The ground is covered with the melons, and he is actually stepping on the melons and he's falling down on the ground, and he's almost ensnared. He is intoxicated by the smell of the fruit and flowers. So here the smell, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and the sense of sight comes into force. Now the pleasure that nature offers in a garden is great. Even Adam had stumbled to them in the Garden of Eden. And that is why the poet also feels intoxicated, and when he can bear it no more, he falls on the grass. Now in the next stanza, the poet talks about the mental garden. Mental garden means, because Andrew Marvell is a metaphysical poet, and therefore he cannot control himself. He cannot, put away himself, not talking about the mental intellectuality. And he says that his sense of touch, smell, taste, etc., all are drunk with happiness. But in the case of his mind, the pleasure which is got from the physical garden seems to be less. And therefore, he wants not only to enjoy the physical garden as his senses are enjoying, he also wants to enjoy a mental garden. And therefore, for his enjoyment, he creates an imaginary world where the garden is very similar to a physical garden. He says, meanwhile, the mind from pleasureless. Pleasureless means the less beauty, the less pleasure, the less happiness which is being derived from the physical garden. So the mind finds that the pleasure which is derived from the physical garden is not enough, and therefore it withdraws, means it creates its own beautiful garden which is a source of happiness. The mind, that ocean where each kind does straight its own resemblance find. The mind is just like an ocean. Just as the ocean is endless, therefore, similarly, the imagination of the mind is also endless. And what does it do? It withdraws into its happiness, and it creates an imaginary surrounding of a equally beautiful garden. It goes beyond the sights and sounds of the garden to another ideal environment where all things are, similar to his thoughts. And the physical senses are fully engrossed with the beautiful scenes in the garden, but the mind also feels peaceful and happy. And therefore, mind creates its own garden. And this garden, which is created by the mind, it is a beautiful garden. And he says, annihilating all that's made to a green thought in a green shade. Annihilating means crossing the boundaries of the physical garden. The mind creates its own paradise. The mind creates its own garden to a green thought in a green shade. Green thought means the green imaginary garden which the mind is creating in order to get mental pleasures also. Because the poet feels that the physical and the mental pleasure, both worlds should be ideally beautiful, and therefore he creates a mental garden where the mind is at peace and enjoys the beauty of the garden. Thank you.